Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and this week on the Forbes Books podcast, we are talking about reinvention. George Elliot said, "It's never too late to be what you might have been." And my guest this week has admittedly reinvented herself more times than she cared or wanted to count. Her name is Osnat Benari. Oz is a product leader, strategist, and an active advisor and coach for startups and young professionals. She's also the author of the new book, Starting from Scratch, Managing Change Like Your Career Depends on It. In it, she provides a step-by-step process of starting from scratch and everything you need to make change work for you. Oz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So, you know how the kids say, show me your receipts? I want you to show me your receipts for the reasoning to write this book. What did you do up to this point in your life that was able to fill a whole book about called Starting from Scratch?
Yeah, so I will say it is filled with my stories, but not just mine. I interviewed 200 people for the book, and 20 of them are mentioned there. But I started from scratch many, many times. I didn't even notice that I did, and while writing the book, I even found out even more of those. And because I did start from scratch, and not just new jobs and, even moving to a new country, but actually reinvented myself in the same workplace, and noticed that I have a method. Notice that when people were asking me, so how did you do that? Or how did you move to that workplace? Or how did you take this new responsibility? I noticed that I have a method. And so looking back, I was like, okay, if I have a method and people are asking me, can I actually put this in writing? As a kid, I was a teen journalist, so I loved writing, and probably this book was a long time coming. I just didn't know what I want to write about. And then when this started happening and I started reinventing myself over and over again and finding new great places to work for, or even reinventing myself in the same workplace, then I decided to put it in writing.
Awesome. It's funny. We're very parallel in that regard, because I ended up writing my book that came out last year because of the fact that I was working with entrepreneurs on their podcast, and I had all these skills that I had acquired while working in radio, and I had always taken those skills for granted. I was like, oh, okay, anybody can do this. And then all of a sudden I'm working with folks who'd never been behind a microphone their entire lives, and I was like, oh, so maybe I could teach people things. And in a way, that's what you did. But my question is, your method that you put together, was that intentional, organic, or was it just something that became tried and true after rinse and repeat type of stuff, where you just kept doing it and sort of iterating over and over again until you found the perfect method?
Yeah, I actually didn't. What happened is that one of the times that I did want to reinvent myself or start from scratch, it didn't work that well. And I was like, okay, why am I stuck? Why is this time so different from previous times? And why is this time so hard? And I kind of reversed engineer the whole process of what did I do previous times that it worked so well and now it doesn't. And then I realized that I was missing some steps. And then I was like, okay, so I have a method, and a method that works. And if I go back to the drawing board and I do follow my steps, then everything will be much better. And so I did that. But also when I interviewed the 200 people that I mentioned, I noticed that they did too. They actually followed the same steps without knowing that they did. And so that was something that was a very good reassurance that, yes, it is actually a method. Some of the people follow it organically. And some people just need to know about it, but it is something that people do and use, and it can probably help the next person.
That's awesome. And I know when Starting from Scratch is a great book title, but I've heard you say that starting from scratch doesn't mean just starting from anywhere. It's starting from scratch means starting from experience.
Yeah. So actually, every time I say starting from scratch, there are some people that say, I'm actually not starting from scratch. I am starting from experience. And they really think that when I say starting from scratch, I mean that, it's a new job or a new place. Right, you're ripping
down the studs.
It isn't. Absolutely not. Starting from scratch is a mentality, and a mentality that says, okay, even if I tried something and it didn't work, it does not mean I don't need to try it again. It does not mean that any experience from the past needs to put some block on how we start again. Any experience is valid. I always say, there are some experiences I went through when I was, 20 years old that I still use today. Absolutely don't scratch everything that you've done before. But starting from scratch is the mentality that everything's up for grabs. You go back to, square one, and square one is to have a learning mindset and be open and be resilient to change and connect with people. And if you go back to that square one, then you give yourself a really good chance. But I don't ever cancel any experience whatsoever.
Excellent. And so that's the first step in your method. So can you take us through some of the methodology? You obviously want people to read the book, so not everything, but what are some of the other steps that you advise people when it comes to quote unquote starting from scratch?
Yeah. I mentioned the first step, which is having a learning mindset. And I think it's really important to, when we're hired for a job, it's very much what happens to us is that we kind of, put our heads down and we work, because this is what we were hired to do. But it is important that we stop for a second and we look around and we check what's new around us, what's new in the market, what is affecting me, my role, my company, my customers, and not constantly be this heads down performer, but actually add to your performance something new that you need to learn. And that learning mindset allows you in time when an opportunity comes your way to maybe use some new information that you just acquired through this learning mindset. Something else that I talk about is to be resilient. And resilient is a physics term, like that squishy ball that you squeeze and then it goes back to its place. So, kind of identify when we're depleted and also identify what brings us back and what makes us positive, because, there's two ways you can react to change. And one is, oh my God, change is coming my way, or, oh my God, change is coming my way, right? It's like exactly the same reaction, but, with positivity and mental strength, you can actually identify opportunity. So that's step number 2, by the way.
Interesting. Good. Well, thank you for keeping it in order because I'm not very bright. So I'm glad you did the step-by-step process. And it's funny. So I'm a card-carrying Generation Xer, and I know for many of us and even the boomers, career tracks were pretty linear. Like, you would start at the bottom, work your way up, sort of like Drake once sang. But now with millennials and I think Gen Z, careers are rarely linear. They're popping all over the place. So talk to me about that mindset in terms of getting out of your own way, because I think a lot of people want to treat things as linear. Like, I will take this job here, work my way up there, then go to another place, work my way up, and it becomes sort of like this innocent climb. That doesn't happen all the time. So for folks that get frustrated that they can't make that sort of linear climb, what do you tell them?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's, kind of the linear path is something that we were all it's very kind of known, right? And there are a lot of people that actually run after the next big title. And sometimes we get the chance and sometimes it's too early when we get that chance. And then we're like, oh my God, it's too big. I needed to, take a step back to actually learn what I need to do in this place. So a linear career is fine if this is what you want to, if this is what your direction is, but also if something else is interesting to you or you want to envision something else in your career, then you should go after that. And that's where the learning mindset is helpful. There's no one stopping you from going to learn how to do something else. There's no one stopping you from saying, oh, actually what Sarah is doing is very interesting and I wish I knew more about it. So meet Sarah, connect with her if you don't know her and try your luck, or go and attend an event where she speaks, or, ask a connection to introduce you to Sarah or someone else that does the same thing, and learn what they're doing, learn what is interesting and what got them to do something, and practice. You can always practice through volunteering or doing work for someone else that just gives you that chance, and then build yourself up for another another career if that's what your head is after or heart is after. But it is really important that you do know what is your path. And, jumping into step 4 is actually to create that path for yourself and to have a role model. It doesn't need to be a real role model. It can be this combination of multiple people or multiple skills and capabilities that you want to own in the future, and just slowly grow yourself into being that person. And you can learn, you can connect with people that can support you. You hopefully have a good network. And if you don't, that's step number 3, by the way. So just build yourself with people that can support you and advise you into kind of, what is the next step in whatever career path you want to go after.
One thing I find fascinating is about the new generation of workforce is their mobility. When I was growing up, it was all about trying to find a job that you could do for 20 years and hopefully retire with a pension or a pretty nice 401k. And it's amazing that millennials and Gen Zs just don't see it that way. And I'm not sure how that shift happened, but when it comes to the way you work, and I know you've mentioned you've done a few things before you got to this point, but the mobile nature of the current generation of the new workforce, is that good, bad? What do you think?
So I think that part of what just happened is really like the openness and authenticity, right? And once you need to be that open and authentic, then if you don't like that job, then being open and authentic will not work with you continuing to do it. And then people, follow their heart, which I love that people do that. I think that, yes, it is maybe more common today with like the younger generations, but the people who are featured in my book are also following probably a similar path, where they say, okay, I was doing something, but now I want to do something else. And how do I do that? And how do I put myself in this starting from scratch mentality? And I really put myself in a new place comfortably or not. And then I do something else and I reinvent myself in a new career, regardless of, my age or where I live or my financial situation or family situation. Like the stories that are mentioned there are really of people that made that change. And some of them made it in the same workplace. Some of them pitched themselves to a different role because that's what they wanted to do. And they used the relationship that they had in the workplace, the credit that they got for doing a really good job in a different role, and pitched themselves to a whole different role, and were given a chance because they were already known with the company and appreciated, and they managed to reinvent themselves in the workplace. Others needed to completely go and work for, some other place. But the fact that, we spend most of our day working, and it is important that we do something that we're passionate about and we're good at and we love that. So another thing that is more and more common, not just, changing jobs and taking more responsibility or different responsibility, is also to have multiple careers. And it actually has a term. It's called portfolio career. And that means that people can do multiple and different jobs and have multiple and different streams of income. And the jobs are not related to each other because they have, none of us are, just one thing interests us. There are multiple things that interest us. And if we can actually make a living out of it, that's the perfect situation. So, regardless of what your path is, I think that, being connected to what you're passionate about and going after that is a recipe for fulfillment and happiness, no?
Yeah. And that portfolio career, it sounds very much like a serial entrepreneur. So it's sort of like the intrapreneur of entrepreneurs that are serial entrepreneurs. And you kind of fall into that basket. I guess you kind of fall into both, but you also have a lot of irons in the fire outside of this book. You've got multiple companies you're involved with. So let's talk about, I think you're involved with an NFT company. Is that true?
Yeah, well, I'm not involved with an NFT company. What I am is last year I started learning more and more about Web3. NFT is part of it, obviously. And to me was important to get both the knowledge, but also the skills and experience. So I partnered with someone else and we started an NFT project mainly for our learning, but also to be able to show kind of what we're after. It's something that actually I tell a lot of people that if you want to own a new skill, and one of the things to prove yourself that you can do it is to learn by doing, do that. So that's what we did. We launched an NFT project, which was more about telling stories of women. And the whole idea about behind the NFT was to support the causes that woman that we featured cares about. So we did that, but that wasn't like the biggest thing we've done. My partner and I, what we've done is we worked with venture studios, we work with gaming companies, we work with a hospitality brand, we worked with an HR company. So we worked with multiple companies to help them kind of find their way in Web3. So I was doing the product side of it because I'm a product manager by trade. And she was doing the branding and design because she's an awesome artist. And together we made some really cool projects this year. And yes, that was part of my portfolio career.
Yeah.
In addition to the book, in addition to doing speaking engagement. Yeah.
You're keeping yourself busy, Oz. And so when you made the jump into NFTs, and obviously that falls into the world of crypto, metaverse, Web3, all of that, for a lot of folks, it's really overwhelming. Like, there are some people like, I don't get it. When you went into all these and investigated Web3 and NFT, was it overwhelming, or did you take baby steps? Because I'm always fascinated by the early adopters who get in early and are able to then become sort of evangelists of a certain platform. So what was it like in your early days of getting into NFTs?
Yeah. So I think, NFTs or any industry that anybody wants to go into. So for me, because I work in product management, to jump into a new industry is not new. I've done this 7 years ago when I wanted to learn more about augmented reality and virtual reality. And I've done this 6 years ago when I wanted to go in after, IoT and AI. So it's something that learning new industries or new technologies or new trends that will affect the work that I'm doing is something that I'm used to do. For me to jump into a new industry was definitely not new, and I felt comfortable putting myself in this uncomfortable situation. I will say, because of how fast, specifically Web3 was growing, it was overwhelming with the amount of resources that I had at my disposal. So it was really to, what newsletters should I read, because there were so many of them coming out, and what courses should I take, again, because there are so many courses coming out. And who are the people I should meet, because more and more people were starting in my network, were starting to know more about it. So but it is, the same way to go after and learning something new. It's, take a class, read a book, read a blog, listen to podcasts and YouTubes and meet people that can help you choose kind of the best way to stay up to date and how do they stay up to date, and then grow a community of people that care about the same thing that you do. So in Web3, it was actually easier than ever because most of it was around having a community and a supportive one that kind of builds together and supports each other's projects. So this one actually was easier than any other time that I needed to learn.
Oh, that's great. Because, there's this American idiom, Oz, I'm sure you've heard it, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
I don't believe that.
It doesn't, I was going to say, it doesn't sound like you believe that.
No, absolutely not. Although my dog cannot be trained, but
Yeah, don't get me started on my dog.
so
yeah.
maybe it is somehow true, but doesn't apply to this one.
Awesome. There's a quote of yours that I really dug. It's building a personal board of directors means that you consult with them, but you also need to give back and stay in touch.
Yes.
I think that's the one tricky thing a lot of people have with networking. It's always like, what can this network person do for me? And I know there's been many books written about being like the go-giver and stuff like that, where you what you put out to the universe comes back to you tenfold. How do you coach people, talk to folks when you're speaking about networking? How do you get people out of this mindset of like, what can I get out of my network, as opposed to what my network can get from me?
So I cannot really emphasize how important it is to have a network. I think there was some research done lately that, about 80% of new jobs are now coming from your network. So, forget about all the job applications. I think that my network for me is a combination of, opening doors, consulting, advice. And I have different people in my network. Some, love me unconditionally and think that I'm the best thing ever. And others are more critical, like provide more criticism because, that's their type. And it is important to have multiple different people in your network so that you can pull whatever you need in that moment. Sometimes you need, that love unconditionally, but actually to just have that is not very helpful. Like it is important that someone else will kind of point to, the things that you can get better in and be there to provide advice in how to get better, not just provide the criticism. And so cultivating a network is something that is important, and that your network can be your colleagues, ex-colleagues, ex-managers, people that are in your industry or people that do your job in a different industry. It can be a combination of kind of all the above. I love that in my network, I have what I call professional crush. It's like people that I really admire and think that, one day I'll have part of what they have, I'll be able to also do. And so to have that network is really important. And then when you contact them and you need their help and advice, be there also when their advice worked or didn't. But just go back and say, so thanks, Sarah, that advice got me to do X, or thanks, Sarah, it didn't work, but, I hope I can consult with you next time, and I'm here for you if you need anything. And when you don't do that, it's just like then the network effect stops, right? Then nothing, they won't recommend you to other people, and you'll stay stagnant in how you grow the people around you, and we grow through people. No one does it alone. And so it is really important that people invest in having a network, but also giving back and, making sure that whenever someone helps you, then you are able to come back and say, and is there a way I can help you as well? And by the way, step 4, which talks about that path and having that roadmap for yourself, is exactly for those type of situations. So when you connect with someone because they need your help and support, and you help them, at the end, they will always say, the good networker will always say, is there anything I can do for you? And if you have a plan, you can articulate that. You can say, oh, actually, I am looking to connect to people that do so-and-so. Or I'm looking for a job. Do you know anybody else? Or I'm looking to learn more about something. Do you know anything about it, or someone else that can help me? Like if you have that, you can always drop your ask in that situation, and that person can, pay it forward that moment in time.
On the subject of opportunities, I know you've talked about the fact that the hiring process is broken. I felt like it's been broken for a while, because now with so much automation and so much, it's the people process has been removed. It's all now algorithms and keywords and all this other stuff. But where do you see is the hiring process? Why do you think it's broken?
I wouldn't blame it all on technology. It's still a process that a lot of it is powered by human. I think that it is a combination of people are not good planners in general. It's hard to make a plan. We're always, rushing to do things. We want to do a good job and we don't have a second to stop because it's very busy. And then we actually start hiring processes that are not aligned with everybody on the team. And we try to do a good job. No one's doing it. No one's trying to be mean or not helpful in the process. But the rush, the fact that, it's not very nice to say bad things about people, like to say a decline is not, is not fun. But we need to remember that if we are preparing a good process, and I think that preparedness is really important. Like, do all the people in the hiring process, all the people that are going to interview, have ever been trained to do an interview. And sometimes people are so talented that they grow in the organization and they get, promoted. But the fact that they're very smart and talented does not mean that they know how to interview, or they know how a hiring process works, or how to ask questions and get good answers when you're looking for talent. I met so many managers that at the end of the interview, I was asking, so how was it? What do you think? And they were like, I think I need more time with the candidate. You just spent an hour. What is it? Like, you don't know how to ask the question. So let's go back and just go through training of, what are you looking for? What is important for you? What would be a successful candidate? And then let's see which questions we can ask in order to extract that from the person in front of us. And then it can be short and sweet. We don't need to involve people that are not supposed to be involved just so that we look like a rigorous process. It is a rigorous process just by the fact that two people are put in this awkward situation. They don't know each other and each wants to show up the best, right? The workplace wants to show up the best and the candidate wants to show up the best. It's hard as it is. So we, just that having that preparedness is really important, but also important to remember that there are people on both ends. So, it is important to have empathy to the people that are in the process. If you don't want to hire them, don't put them continuing the process because you need more candidate or you need plan B. If they are not a fit, just say no and save them the time and the mental kind of pressure that they're in a process where they have no chance in getting to the finish line. And on the other side, as candidates, we need to know that recruiters have so many things on their plate that expecting them to do things that you expect without saying that, they might not know, or they are too busy to notice. And it is okay to say, hey, John, so what is the process? Or, hey, John, so this wasn't in the process when we initially talked about. So the fact that you added a panel or the fact that you now added an exercise, can you explain to me, where did I fail in previous process to show you who I am or what I'm doing, that we need this new process now. But be vigilant into what you're being put through. I've been put through processes that I was interviewed by 9 people, 15 people, panels of 5. This is ridiculous. Like, we need to think of both sides throughout this process and say, are we proud of this process that we put in place? And are we proud to participate in it? And I think if both sides are awake and they're not kind of on this autopilot, I think the hiring world will look better, and maybe we'll have even faster results for both sides.
It sounds like there's a word that a business doesn't do well that you think needs to do better at, and that's nuance. Because what you talked about is all nuance. It's not stuff that you could put in a PowerPoint presentation or an Excel document. It's stuff where the human beings really got to just get their hands dirty and work with the sticky stuff. But I think businesses, nuance is hard because it requires a lot of time and energy, right?
Yes, and experience. And if you don't have it, then ask for help. There'll always be a recruiter. It's amazing how many people I know that they involve the recruiter just to post the job. But the recruiter knows so much about the process. They can teach you about interviewing. They can teach you about asking for feedback. They can teach you about, what is the right process. Involve them better and not just use them at the beginning to filter the CVs or just put the job out there. And you'll be surprised how much you can learn from having a recruiter, even doing, a summary after you interviewed someone, talking it out loud with a recruiter that will interview you of what you've learned and what is important to you. And slowly you'll grow to be a really, really good hiring manager and a really good person that identifies talent very quickly. And then you don't lose the talent on the way. Good talent might drop in the middle because your process is too long and you lost it. Maybe you just need that help to know how to identify it. And then next time you interview only twice, and then you move on and you hire that person. So it is important to be not just nuanced, but also understand that every job has an expert. And if you aren't, then it is okay to put yourself in a learning mode and either learn by yourself, taking courses, classes, books, podcasts, YouTubes, whatever, or having a network that will teach you. And the recruiter is there exactly for that, to teach you and give you advice.
Awesome. Well, the book is Starting from Scratch, Managing Change Like Your Career Depends on It. Osnat Benari. Oz, thank you so much for the time. It's been a great conversation. Good luck on the book. I know it's going to be a
Thank you.
scary time to unleash the beast to the masses, but this is the fun stuff. The hard work is done. Now it's just the fun stuff, just being able to talk about the book and have people enjoy it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent, Oz. Thanks again for the time.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for another episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.